build stuff, have fun. I think those are two really good components, and then talk about it.
Answer.
Like,
How did you learn to communicate effectively?
yeah, like for me, learning is life.
What advice would you give to people who are looking to get into Web3 for the first time and work for a Web3 company?
Matter if you cannot communicate well, if you
Putting yourself out there in the community, I think, is key.
usually this is actually very helpful or very valuable in my opinion. So
Hello and welcome to the Behind the Blockchain podcast. Today I'm joined by Philipp Heuberger, Senior Engineer at Toucan Protocol. Philipp, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for inviting me.
No, thank you for being here. Thanks for being here. So, for people who don't know who you are, could you give us a bit of an introduction?
Yeah, I am Philip, as you said, and I'm a lead engineer at Toucan, and I really like to code. And yeah, like that's what I've been doing for the past, I don't know, 25 years ish. I think. Yeah, I've been coding since I was, I don't know, like 11, 13, something
Wow,
something around that age. So yeah, like this is kind of my passion, and like even if nobody were to pay me for it, I would probably still do
it's good. That's how you know it's a passion.
it. Yeah.
So why did you take an interest in software engineering in the first place?
It's That's a very good question. I think it's so many interesting problems to solve, and just to like with a couple of keystrokes, you're able to let a machine do your bidding, if you will. I mean that sounds weird, but it's really it's this powerful feeling that you get when you can create something out of nothing almost. And yeah, I personally, for example, I started coming from the game development area, or I had an interest in game development initially. And when I was young, I programmed uh, a few like super simple games, and really, yeah, like that was really enjoyable, and that was really what's the word?
Enjoyable.
God, enjoyable, exactly, not enjoyable. Uh, yeah, that was really enjoyable for me to see something on the screen, to be able to move something on the screen, and yeah, this is I think how I got into coding, and then I at a very young age I actually told my parents that I want to study computer science. I think I really literally said it when I was 13. I
Wow.
want to become a computer scientist or whatever.
Knew from
And
an early age.
this is yeah. It was like it was crystal clear for me. Many people at my age they didn't even know what to do, and even later in life, like many people didn't know which direction to go. And for me, it was always crystal clear. I'm always going to do something with computers, and that's what I did. And yeah, like I haven't regretted it for a single moment.
That's cool. That's cool. So could you talk us through your career journey so far then? So
Mhm.
from kind of first role to now.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, and I've been all over the place almost. I During my studies, I did an internship at a it's a subsidiary of Volkswagen, and they developed technology for the car. For example, the first lane assist software for those Volkswagen cars,
Okay.
or park assist software, stuff like that. And I was doing my internship there, and got a look into model based development, which means like literally they sit in front of the computer. They don't really type the code. They have huge diagrams in front of them, and they connect like one box to another, and basically, yeah, like they model the whole thing visually, and then in the end, like there's a super efficient, uh, I don't know what it is, cross compiler or something that turns that into super efficient C code that goes into the car.
Interesting.
So that was my first professional. gig, if you will. And then I I did a few things, and for a long time actually, yeah, did mobile development, Android first, and then iOS later. And like all in all, I think that's I think maybe 10 years I did that, which is a
Okay.
super long time, maybe less, maybe 8 or so, doesn't matter. And yeah, like at that time, I also co-founded a company which was also centered around an app idea. So the skill set was super handy, and yeah, like I did that for so long that I kind of saw the rise and fall of mobile development. You could say, because like I mean, obviously there's still mobile development going on, but it's definitely not as hot anymore, as you very well know. And
Yeah.
in the beginning, everybody was doing it. Everybody wanted to do an app. Every company thought they needed an app, even if it was completely pointless, even if it was just basically their web page in an app or something, like super useless, if you will, but they still everybody needed to do it. So this was basically the heyday, and then people realized, oh, okay, this is not as great as we thought it would be. This is not adding much value or whatever. So people kind of lost interest in it a bit, and for me, it was also a little bit too much front end heavy, and usually you have more interesting problems to solve on the back end side. So I kind of then at the end of that term, I gravitated towards backend development more, which which then was that wasn't maybe I don't know if that's maybe too in detail, um, but you can cut all of that out. Um, there was an interesting a friend of mine had this company, like he runs a business, and he knew this company that, and they needed a software to help them process large amounts of physical questionnaires. They physically sent them out to people, and then there's questions like people can answer with their handwriting or in handwriting, and then yeah, like there were some check boxes and stuff like that, and they would send like 100,000 of those things out, and they would receive 10 or 20 or 30,000 back. And obviously, like that's a lot of data that you have in physical form now. And in the end, your client wants that data in digital form, in Excel sheets or stuff like that. So they obviously have to go through every single questionnaire and record all the handwritten answers, record all the check marks, and all that stuff. So that takes a long time. So I built a a web app that helps you collect all that data, that also does the checkmark recognition for you. So you don't have to say, okay, yeah, well, the user selected 1A and 1B, or stuff like that. So most of that stuff was recognized automatically. And but obviously the handwriting is too difficult still. Maybe nowadays it's better. You still had to kind of type that by hand. So because like some people have really bad handwriting.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you saw mine, the program wouldn't read it probably. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Mine
it'd be
too. Mine too. Yeah. Yeah. It's. I mean, it is what it is. Like people have like such a different or handwritings are so different from one person to another. It's a really difficult problem to solve. So yeah, they did that by hand, but everything was loaded into this web app. They could go from one questionnaire to the next, and everything was snappy and fast. So it was super helpful for them to have this. And basically, they were my first customer, but unfortunately, they were also my only customer because it's extremely difficult to find. Um, to convince somebody to use your software if you're a nobody, and people, and especially those companies that need this kind of software, they are kind of stuck in the past. They are not really, um, yeah, they don't really want to try new stuff. They want something from a known brand where they know it works and where they know they have sales reps they can talk to, and stuff like that. So it was very difficult. That's not part of this podcast. But this is where I learned full stack development, and I had the entire backend running basically serverless on AWS, which was really nice because since it was only one client, they obviously they had like those core working hours, German core working hours from, let's say, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and then they would completely shut the computer off, and there would be no workload after that. So having all that stuff serverless was great because I didn't have to pay for a server running after 5 p.m., for example. So this is where I got like really deep into services architecture and the AWS stack, and obviously coming from mobile development, I also learned a lot about front end development, JavaScript and HTML, and then also again JavaScript for coding all those lambdas. And this is this is the job that led me to another job a um, at a SaaS company. The SaaS companies like friends of mine founded, and there I did also serverless. I coded serverless architectures. For example, getting their email sending processes into serverless, so they can be heavily parallelized and taken out of their monolith. Yeah, like which was a huge workload before, and then they could at least like spin off that part, which was generating like quite a lot of traffic, and they could like spin it off into their serverless containers. So um, I did that for quite a while, the SaaS job, and then yeah, like while I was at the SaaS job, I kind of realized I really would like to do something in the climate tech space because I'm a climate nerd, if you can say that. Like sustainability and that kind of stuff is really important to me.
Yeah.
So I naturally gravitated towards that direction, and always thought, yeah, if a job were to come along that was in the climate tech space, I, I couldn't possibly say no. And at the same time, I like I learned more and more about blockchain technology. I have been mm, kind of loosely in the space, not from a professional point of view, but obviously as a uh, person following along or mining Dogecoin in 2014 or something, like stupid stuff.
Yeah.
I knew what the space was about, but I didn't really follow along with Web3 development. That was kind of new to me at the time, and I got into it and I did some research on it, and I thought this is really interesting. As everybody who's coming to the space thinks in the beginning, like this is interesting. You could solve all the world's problems almost.
Yeah.
You could do voting. You could do, I don't know, whatever. And it was really fascinating to me. So I basically started to learn more about it, do little prototypes, tutorials, that kind of stuff. And then at the same time, almost, I stumbled over uh, Klima and Toucan, the Klima DAO and the Toucan protocol. And I thought this is really interesting. Like they are uh, tackling a really interesting problem. meaning trying to have a carbon-backed currency. So I got involved in the Discord a bit and learned more about it, and then it was a huge coincidence that I met on Telegram the co-founder of Toucan, and
Wow,
at the
okay.
same time he told me, yeah, we're looking for, like, he was just like casually chatting to me. Yeah, okay, so what's your goal in Web3? What do you want to do? And then I explained, yeah, I would like to work in Web3. It sounds like a really interesting space. And then he said, yeah, we're looking for people right now. And he sent me the job offer, and I looked at it, and I was like, okay, what, Toucan? I've heard of them before. And then I realized, okay, yeah, Toucan. Like, okay, that's interesting. Complete coincidence. We decided that we will start on a kind of trial basis, a freelance trial basis, just to see how we would work together. Because
Yeah,
in the beginning, I said I've done some smart contract development. I've used Hardhead and those technologies, but I haven't done it for long. I mean, at this point, I have maybe spent 3 months learning and using it. So I said, I'm actually not sure if I'm really the right fit. Let's just give it a try. And he said, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let's just give it a try. And long story short, I'm still at Toucan.
no, that's cool. That's cool. It's a good story how you got into Toucan. Get involved in the Discord and the
Yeah, it's
community, and then just start chatting online to the founder and stuff. The whole community piece in Web3 is massive, and not just to make projects successful or anything like that, but from a job seeker's perspective, or someone looking to get involved in certain projects, putting yourself out there in the community, I think is key. Chatting to the right people,
yeah,
being really helpful, getting involved in what you can do, and this kind of stuff. I've heard a lot of people actually get get their next position because of that, or doing that exact thing. So yeah, it's
yeah.
powerful. Um, so
Absolutely. And the space, sorry, and the space is so small that you have a realistic chance to actually like meet influential people, or you're not one of millions doing Java development, for example, but you're one of the actually few people who are kind of at the cutting edge, or maybe even at the bleeding edge, who knows? And that is very special actually.
yeah, I agree. I agree. So you've talked about the technical skills, the front end and back end development, mobile development, and smart contract stuff. What else do you think has kind of helped you? What are the skills have you learned along the way which have really helped you in achieving your current role, or even previous roles? Is there anything more on maybe the softer side or anything like that at all?
Yep. Definitely, I would say that I think many people would underrate it, but I personally think that networking is really, really important.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be super structured, but I see that with other people sometimes they would be hesitant to call somebody up, or to write somebody a message that they had a nice chat with. For example, let's say you meet somebody at a conference, and you have a really interesting conversation, and you both go your separate ways, and then like a few months later, or maybe even a year later, who knows, you realize, ah, yeah, this person, they had this really interesting, or they were working for this really interesting company, or they had this really interesting contact they were telling me about, something along those lines. Many people would then say, oh, I cannot possibly write that person. They don't even know who I am. They would be annoyed that I'm stealing their time or something. But more often than not, like personally, I've never even experienced anything else. More often than not, people are really willing to help you. They are
Mm.
really they're really friendly. Most people are actually really nice. You wouldn't believe. So I usually write those people just saying, yeah, like it's been a while, I know, but yeah, we've talked about this and that, and I realize you're doing this, and like I had this question, And then from this question, something else might develop. Who knows? Like, or it doesn't. Who knows? But maybe you reconnect. Maybe you have another nice chat. So yeah, there's not much that can go wrong. Maybe there's this odd person somewhere in the world that thinks, okay, weird, why are they writing me? Okay, could be, but like usually this is actually very helpful or very valuable in my opinion. So networking is is important and it's valuable and it is underestimated in my opinion. And the thing that is super important in most of the current day jobs is communication. And I cannot stress this enough. It does not matter how good you are on a technological basis or how well you can code or how you are such a brilliant marketer or business development person. It really doesn't matter if you cannot communicate well, if you cannot communicate what your expectations are, if like or what roadblocks may come up if you don't include people into your thought process, for example, and don't give them a chance to be on the same page as you are, because like otherwise you will be always the person like way in front of them, and they will all like it will always feel like you're dragging them behind you, and they will always think like, okay, where like his head is or his or her head is in the cloud. What are they doing? Like what are the next steps? Like what are we even doing? So communication is extremely important, and like from communication you get teamwork and all those things, but I think it all starts with communication.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So how did you, this might be quite a difficult question to answer. How did you learn to communicate effectively?
Oh yeah, that's really difficult to answer indeed.
Is it just a case of putting yourself out there and trial and error and you worked it out? Is it listening to podcasts, reading certain books and stuff? Is it just, yeah, like I said, just trial and error, see what works, see what doesn't?
I think yeah, trial and error, and always have a tendency to over communicate and not under communicate. Um, like even if you share a little bit too much, obviously you shouldn't share everything you're doing, like every little detail. Nobody needs to know every little detail, but sharing more than you think you should share is probably a good approach, because yeah, more often than not, you take stuff for granted. You are in your own head, obviously, and in your own head, everything makes sense. But
Mhm.
to other people, they cannot see what's in your head. They to them it might not make that much sense, or they might not even expect you do this one thing. Because for you, it's obvious. Like obviously, I'm doing this task right now because that's what I always do, or that's what people should be doing. Who knows? But to other people, that might not be obvious, and they might be surprised, or they might have thought that you were doing another task, for example. So I think always share a little bit more than you think you should is a good metric, I think. And yeah, as you say, it's trial and error. I don't know if there are good books on the topic. Maybe there are, but reading books is one thing, and like really doing stuff is another. I have a feeling reading books is good to build an understanding for a topic, or to um, yeah, to see different perspectives. But reading a book is maybe not necessarily good in getting you to do something, or to it's not super actionable. So yeah, I don't know, if you want to understand the importance of communication, and you don't see the importance of communication, then reading a book is probably good, because it will show you all the important things around that topic. But to
Yeah.
actually be more communicating, you actually just need to do it. You maybe you set yourself a timer, or I don't know, or put a sticky on on your monitor, for example. Like every time you look at the sticky, you share something. I don't know. I'm not a communications expert, as you can as you realize by now. But yeah, I think trial and error is what's worked for me.
Cool. So why did you? I know you briefly touched on it, but why did you initially take an interest in Web3 and blockchain itself?
I think it was because of the interesting kinds of problems it's it's solving, and also the technology behind it is very interesting. Um, it's really as simple as that. It's really like if something catches my interest and I kind of get fired up thinking about it, or like playing around with it, then that's good enough for me to go into a topic and even go deep into a topic. And like for me, it's like really really that simple. I see something that's interesting, then I like invest some time in it and I play around with it. And if it's still interesting, then I will go deeper and play some more with it, maybe build something more complex. And if it's still interesting, I will still go deeper and build maybe something even more complex and just play around with ideas and just try to learn as much as I can about it, because to me that's how I operate. I really 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 like to learn stuff. I mean, my wife is laughing about me that I'm sitting in bed before going to sleep reading a book about software architectures or stuff like that. Like, and she said like, okay, this is what you do for fun, or this is what you do like to calm down, or whatever. And I say, yeah,
Yeah.
it's exactly like I feel like reading this right now. Like this is exactly what I should be reading at this moment. So yeah, like for me, learning is life.
No, that's good. That's good. So, could you talk me through what your current role entails in a little bit more detail? You know, what does a day in the life of the lead engineer or a lead engineer at Toucan Protocol look like?
Yeah. Um, so I am more on the backend side now. I don't do very much protocol work, if at all. Really, it would be only very small Solidity functions that I would write. Um, but mostly it's really for me TypeScript, data acquisition, like getting voluntary carbon market data, cleaning, transforming data. Those are the things I do on a regular basis. And also, obviously, our protocol has this infrastructure harness around it. I mean, the smart contracts are obviously one thing. They are the core piece, if you will. But around it, there is lots of infrastructure code, setting permissions, um, administering smart contracts, getting information from the blockchain, like tons of different tasks. And like for us, that's all hard hat code. So I'm also constantly in there refactoring that code or extending the code. But again, it's TypeScript. So like for me, everything kind of revolves around TypeScript. I'm fairly deep in the TypeScript world. So for me, the normal day is really like first of all working remote, which means like I'm working mostly from home, but going to the office every now and then. But yeah, like structuring my day like fairly loosely, and then writing code, doing code reviews, obviously, because we have a decent code review process, and um, yeah, like that kind of stuff. Then coding, then obviously a few meetings here and there, but not too many. We're not that heavy on meetings. We're very heavy on asynchronous communication. For us, like important things are documented in our ticketing software and in Notion. So yeah, like it's not the classical 9 to 5 job where you go into the office and like everything is centered around that and everything is like kind of like crunched into this time frame. Like for me, everything is more loose. Like if I need to go to the gym like at lunch or around lunch or something, then I just do it. Then uh, then I do my work like either in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening or whatever, like whenever the I have the time to do it. So everything is a little bit more loose, and communications are async more than they are synchronous. Lots of commenting on pull requests, lots of commenting in Notion pages or in our linear task tracking software. And but still, obviously, we have synchronous meetings, just not like a lot of them.
Cool, cool. And did you have to change your mindset a bit coming from the Web 2 world to coming into Web 3, being an engineer in the two different spaces? Is there a mindset shift at all?
Um, For me, not really, no, because I was working a good chunk remote before, and I think, yeah, I mean, it's really you really have to look at the two aspects of it. Like one is like how you work, and the other thing is what you work on. Obviously, what I work on is somewhat different, but not crazy different, I would say, because like as I said earlier. I still do data wrangling in TypeScript, which I have been doing before. And it's still, as I say, TypeScript and not a new language that I'm using right now. So on that front, not crazy much has changed, but the way how I work definitely has changed because it's compared to previous jobs, at least for me personally, like the work at Toucan is more, I don't know if professionalized is the right word, or I don't know how to properly say it, but it's really like we have this triangular GitHub workflow, for example, and I in the previous jobs that like either wasn't necessary or people didn't know about it or like they thought they don't need it. But like there we have like a really good setup with lots of automation and good integration. So like this feels like really professional. Like in a like you would probably find the same setup in a bigger organization. So this is really awesome to have. And yeah, like this asynchronous communication is great because you you have the information less in silos, but more in the open. Like for example, we document we document so many things like internal calls, external calls, like taking proper notes and documenting outcomes, next steps, and everything. So you can actually like see what's going on and see where some discussions are headed. For example, see how some decisions were made, just because everything is documented async in Notion. Whereas if everybody like was just like if only the founders were potentially talking in a sitting together in a room, then you would never know like what was the outcome of this or that decision, or why was this decision made, or like what are the factors going into the decision. So that's very different actually to previous jobs for me.
Okay, cool. Could you introduce us to Toucan in a little bit more detail?
Yeah. So Toucan is a infrastructure provider in the voluntary carbon market on-chain space. Um, Toucan basically created this infrastructure for Vera credits to be bridged onto the blockchain. I don't know how familiar your listeners are with the voluntary carbon market. So I'll just like briefly touch on it.
Okay.
There's two carbon markets. One is the voluntary carbon market, and the other one is the compliance carbon market. The compliance carbon market would be, for example, Tesla getting a basically a certain number of allowances they can like CO2 allowances they can basically use as any other car company um, uh, so as any other car company too. um, they can either use them for offsetting their own productions, or like as it is, like, or since it is Tesla, they don't use as much CO2 because like the cars are electric. They can sell some of their credits that they were allotted in the first place. So this is the compliance market, and everything is regulated around or everything is regulated by governments. And then on the other hand, you have the voluntary carbon market, which is, as the name implies, it's completely voluntary. People pledge to offset their emissions either in full or partially, whatever they think is best, and they do that by going to that market and buying however many tons of carbon emissions reductions as they need. So basically, they do some estimations before. Maybe they get a proper science-based um, what's the word I'm looking for, assessment, or from a third party. And like this third party may say you emitted 100,000 tons in the year 2022 or something, and then they go and say, okay, well then we go to the voluntary carbon market and we buy 100,000 tons, and then obviously they still have to decide what kind of projects they want to use, because there's obviously different projects. There's um, projects like solar um, panel installation, like big solar parks, for example, or cook stove projects in Africa where they, um, basically give people living in rural areas better cooking equipment so their CO2 emissions are less, for example, like stuff like that. And then there's also like the really high end stuff like carbon dioxide removal, like either using machines to draw carbon from the atmosphere, or using nature-based solutions. For example, kelp would be an interesting solution to bind CO2 from the atmosphere and have it sink to the ocean ground, and it will stay there for 1,000 years, or like, I don't know. I don't know the details. How many years? Anyway, um, so yeah, long story short, I think I rambled on a little bit too much. Long story short, though, Toucan provides the infrastructure for those credits to come on chain. And in the beginning, we did it with Vera credits. Vera is a standard and registry body that has like, millions of credits in their database, if you will. And our thinking was, it would be much better to have those credits on the blockchain because it's transparent, it's open, people can see like who's using what, who is retiring credits, and it's mathematically guaranteed to be or it's mathematically guaranteed that you cannot have double spending. Double spending would be a problem that is actually this is actually a problem in the traditional carbon market where company A would claim carbon emissions reductions, and for maybe some reason, maybe there was an error or something, maybe people didn't like set correct flags on this data set, on this credit, for example. Company B was also able to claim the same emissions, and that's obviously a problem. Like if company A claims the emissions, they need to be canceled out. Nobody else could then claim those emissions. But since it's a mutable database where those things are stored in the traditional market, it could very well happen. Like if people don't have like really good code that prevents them to edit this data point, let's say, then double spending really might happen. Whereas in the blockchain world, it's mathematically proven. I mean, given the blockchain code is audited properly and it really works as it's intended to work, but then it's mathematically proven that you cannot yep, use this credit more than one time. So
Okay.
yeah, sorry, long story short, um, we are building infrastructure to bridge the voluntary carbon market on chain to bring it into a more okay, or bring it into the digital era, if you will.
Mhm. That's cool. That's cool. So you've been there for a little while now. I
Mhm.
think I can't remember how long off the top of my head from your LinkedIn. Is it 7 or 8 months you've been at Toucan now?
I
Something like
think
that,
it's
or longer?
one and a half years or so.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and obviously Toucan was your first role within the Web3 space, from what I
Mhm.
understand. What advice would you give to
Yeah.
people who are looking to get into Web3 for the first time and work for a Web3 company?
Yeah. As we've talked about earlier, I would say do learn about the space, build projects, because projects you can really share afterwards. You can share with interested parties. If it's just you basically reading stuff or or just recreating those tutorials step by step, then it's very difficult for somebody else to really gauge how well you actually understood the thing you were learning about. So my recommendation would be to go out, do tutorials. No question about it. You need to start somewhere, but every time you do a tutorial or you build a little project, always kind of deviate from the goal they're setting or from the solution they're giving you, just to see if you can like take this thing into another direction, because like this really shows that you um, understood what you were doing, that you were actually able to translate your learnings into something slightly different. And the more your experience grows, the more you learn about it, the more you will be able to deviate from those paths they give you in those tutorials, for example. And in eventually, you don't need a tutorial at all. You just like come up with something interesting that you want to build, that you want to see in the world. Maybe it doesn't exist before, or maybe you just recreate something which is entirely possible, or which is totally fine. Like let's say you create the on-chain Twitter, for example. It really doesn't matter, but like this is definitely a worthwhile thing to do, because once you do talk to people about getting a job or having a trial phase or whatever it is, or collaborating with them, then you will need to show them that you actually know what you're doing. I mean, obviously you need to speak to them and they will ask you questions, and then you will have to convey that you do on a deep level understand what they require you to do, or what they would hire you for. But like having something out there, having something on GitHub, that they can look at and see like what is your coding style even? Like this is not something you tell people about. Like you cannot really you can I mean you can kind of get to it in a discussion, but it's much better to see like how somebody structures their code and get a feeling for how that person really works by looking at their code. So definitely have something out there to show people, even if it's just small things, even if it's not many things, but still have something out there. And then, as we've said, it's really easy nowadays to get involved with projects. For example, like uh, I'm like for example, I'm in this Discord for in this the Graph protocol Discord. I'm in there. Like the Graph is like a really interesting and important piece of technology in the Web3 space, and there is not much going on. So if you went there and if you wanted to work for the Graph, let's say, then it would be super easy for you to take part in their hackathons, to get in touch with the founders or people that are that have important positions in the company, and yeah, like basically step by step, getting to know them, and if they know you, then they're more likely to look at your application, for example, and then they will look at your code, and maybe they have already seen your code because you've taken part in a hackathon or something. It's so easy to get involved because there's not much traffic. It's not like you go into the Graph Discord and there's like 100,000 messages per second flying by, and you're just this one person who is drowned in all the noise. No, actually, there's not much
Yeah.
going on. So it's actually very easy for you to do that.
Okay, cool. No, that's yeah, that's good advice. Good advice. So, in your opinion, then, what do you think are some of the challenges that we need to overcome before a lot of these Web3 technologies, like the graph and like Toucan, for example, become pretty mainstream?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, public perception is something that's holding the space back. I mean, we all know there's a lot of hacks or um, yeah,
A
like
lot of scams. A
FTX
lot of scams around.
crumbling, a lot of scams. No, seriously, there are a lot of scams, which is unfortunate. Um, and it kind of also it drags everybody down. I mean, like it's dragging the meaningful projects, the good people down along with the whole rest. And that's obviously a problem. So I think there is no point in telling people to stop scamming people or anything of that sort. There is no point to it. I think the way we will evolve is through regulation. And I think this is what the space needs. I mean, sure, like maybe there are some utopian use cases that you potentially then couldn't do with more regulation. Maybe that's true, but on the other hand, the way it is right now, with all the bad things happening, nobody will take the space seriously anyway. So your utopia wouldn't even come to pass, no matter what. So regulation, I think, is the way forward. And with regulation, you will have big players because they can then build trust. They can then realize, okay, this is a space or a technology that we can rely on, and we will not get burned. So with those companies or bigger players adopting the technology or adopting uh, the Web3 space or the Web3 um, mentality, we actually have a chance to make it, if you will.
For sure. And you mentioned something previously about when you were in mobile development, everyone wanting to
Mhm.
create apps, even when they don't necessarily need them, they thought that they wanted one and everyone had to have it. Do you think the same thing will happen with blockchain to some degree?
To some degree, it definitely will happen, and it's even happening. I mean, I don't know too much about it, but like for example, I don't know if we need a blockchain-based social network. Maybe that's a really good idea, but maybe not. It's not a good idea. I definitely don't know about it too much to really have an opinion. But I think there's more things like that. People sometimes go in with the mindset, "Oh, I have this really interesting technology. What do I do with it now?" Whereas they should be going in and saying, I have this problem I want to solve. I have the blockchain technology. Like, does this really solve my problem? Yes or no? If it does solve your problem, perfect, use it. If it doesn't solve your problem, then maybe don't use it. It's actually that simple. And yeah, but because people go in and have this technology, same with AI, they want to do something with it, and then they try to solve a problem, or they try to come up with a problem, which maybe isn't even a real problem. So you have a lot of those same things where products are being built that don't really solve a real need, or uh, are not really important or worthwhile.
For sure, for sure. So, if you were given an unlimited pot of money then, or limited time, unlimited resources, are there any specific challenges you're seeing right now that you'd love to have a go at getting involved in?
Yeah. So as you know, I'm on this mission already, addressing climate change. This is super important to me, and this is super important to solve in, or rather sooner than later. So I would I would stay in that space, and I would, with unlimited resources, really scale the whole thing up and really see how we can go from just the refi people, the regenerative finance people to care about it, but go beyond that. For example, include policymakers more, maybe even do some lobbying, because like this is how the industry quote unquote works, and really get like really build some more momentum to actually have systemic change, compared to individuals just changing their behaviors, because that's good that some people don't eat meat, or that more people use their bike, but it only can achieve so much. We will never be able to convert everybody to use the bike or to eat less meat. But with policymakers being involved, and policymakers really understanding how important this is, and maybe even having some incentives, however they may look like. Maybe we will figure this out exactly, that policymakers have incentives. I think this will. I would really like to tackle this to facilitate systemic change.
Cool. That sounds good. Is there anything in Web3 as a whole that you would change, or that you don't agree with, or you would change, or anything like that?
Mm, that's a good question. There's a lot of, I mean, like aside from the bad actors and the scams, obviously,
Hmm.
um, I wouldn't change much, to be honest. I mean, obviously, we all need to realize that regulation is good for the survival. I mean, I don't want to paint it as dire as it may sound, but to really get mainstream adoption, I think regulation is key. So I would um, wish for people to first understand that, and then secondly work towards that. And other than that, I think the space is great. Um, I really like the energy and the momentum people are bringing. It's really refreshing. It really doesn't feel like a grind being in this space. Like people are like first of all, people are really collaborative, which I very very much like. They are um, they are social. They get together. They get fired up, and that's what I really like about the space. So I wouldn't change
Yeah.
much, to be honest. I mean, from the obvious things, aside from the obvious things.
No, that's good. That's good. Cool. So as a leader in Web3 then, what advice would you give to people who are looking to follow in your footsteps?
Um, yeah. I mean, build stuff, have fun. I think those are two really good components, and then talk about it. Like either maybe on Twitter or write a blog about it, or even just go into Discord and chat with people about the thing you've built. I think it doesn't have to be more complicated than that.
This might be a tricky question. Just to
Mhm.
finish off, is there a piece of advice that you wish you'd have been told earlier in your career? So if you could go back now and speak to you, 15 years ago, whenever it might be, any piece of advice you'd love to give that person?
Mm, yeah, I think I like what I just said now. I should have taken that on board way earlier. Is to put more stuff out into the world because in the first, let's say, 15 years of my career, I was only working for companies that were where the code was closed source. I didn't put much. I didn't put many projects onto GitHub, let's say, to show people what I do in my spare time, for example. So yeah, like I would actually just go back and tell myself that it's good to have something out there. Um, and everything else will just naturally fall into place almost. Yeah, I think it turned out well for me. So I wouldn't need to change much going back. So yeah, like this is the thing that probably would have made a difference to yeah, I don't know, go other places or even go higher. Who knows? I don't know. Weird. I don't know.
That's good. It's good advice. Well, yeah, Philip, thank you very much for your time today. It was great to talk to you. It's a really interesting journey. Yeah, you gave some really good advice. I think there's a lot of stuff there for people to learn from, and a lot that people can take from that. If anyone has any questions or they want to reach out to you, are they okay? Is it LinkedIn is the best place? Just drop me a message and just have a chat. If they want any
Wherever.
any extra advice on what you've said.
Absolutely. Connect wherever you want with me. It could be LinkedIn. You can drop me an email. You will. Will you link my personal webpage? I
Yes.
think there's my
Yeah,
email
yeah.
on it.
I'll tag everything on here.
Perfect, perfect. And I have my Twitter profile there. You can write me on Twitter. Yeah, like really wherever you are, just drop me a message. And yeah, like if you have questions, I'm happy to help. I'm always happy to help people out with their journey. Yeah, that's what I really like to do.
Great, great. Well, yeah. Thank you very much for your time.
It was a pleasure talking to you. So yeah, like thanks for inviting me.